WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 o'clock in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Porto Novo. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and around the world. We are live on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. President Mahama calls for prudent monetary and fiscal management for economic reset as he swears in new governance of the central bank.
Ghana's financial sector is in crisis, and the task ahead demands experience, foresight, and decisive leadership. I am confident that we will rebuild trust in the institution, will restore stability, and put our economy back on a path of sustained growth.
And Mauritania's state prosecutor requests a 20-year prison sentence for former President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz. Liberian government laments negative impact of freeze in U.S. aid funds in key sectors of the economy.
USAID was Liberia's second largest donor next to the World Bank. So if your second largest donor pulls out, then we hope that all the projects will not be cancelled.
A Nigerian chief of defense staff calls for innovative strategies to combat counter-terrorism efforts. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Newslink begins in Ghana as President John Dramani Mahama has called for the implementation of prudent monetary and fiscal management as well as the independence of the central bank to restore the country's dwindled economic fortunes. Speaking at the swearing-in ceremony of the new governor of the central bank, Dr. Johnson Pandit Esiama, and the first deputy governor, Zakaria Mumuni, President Mahama stressed that the central bank must operate independently without any political interference.
Ghana's financial sector is in crisis, and the task ahead demands experience, foresight, and decisive leadership. With Dr. Esiama heading the Bank of Ghana, I am confident that we will rebuild trust in the institution, will restore stability, and put our economy back on a path of sustained growth. Our recent banking history has shown us the cost of neglecting this truth. During the supposed banking sector cleanup exercise, thousands of jobs were lost and lives were disrupted because decisions were made with a narrow focus rather than the consideration of the human impact of those decisions. The Bank of Ghana had the opportunity to salvage some of these institutions to protect people's livelihoods while ensuring stability, but instead, an approach that ignored human consequences was what was made. The lessons of the past remind us of the dangers of fiscal recklessness and the lasting harm it can inflict on an economy. When government resorts to unsustainable consumption, expenditure, financed by excessive and unregulated printing of money, the consequences can be severe, from spiraling inflation, erosion of incomes, to driving millions into poverty. Such actions not only weaken public confidence in financial institutions, but also threaten long-term stability. To safeguard our economy from these risks, we must uphold responsible fiscal management, strict adherence to legal and regulatory framework, and protect the independence of the Bank of Ghana. As President, I'm committed to ensuring that the central bank operates free from political interference, guided solely by its mandate. This is the path to building a resilient economy, one where policies are driven by discipline, foresight, and the best interests of the Ghanaian people.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama. Let's turn attention to Liberia at the moment because President Joseph Boakai has announced the Executive Order number 142, which aims to streamline revenue collection from international travel. This order suspends the Goods and Services Tax, GST, on international travel services and introduces a fixed levy on airline tickets for passengers departing Liberia. This decision is part of the government efforts to improve revenue mobilization and address ongoing challenges related to GST collection, particularly for online ticket purchases. Amo Edit has been reading through the President's executive order.
The new levy is designed to reduce revenue leakages and promote a more transparent and efficient collection process in the end, supporting economic growth. Key aspects of the executive order include suspension of the previous 10% GST on international transport services and travel agencies services, which is now suspended. Under the new directive, flat rate will be applied to each international travel ticket, with specifics to be established by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning (MFDP) in collaboration with the Liberia Revenue Authority (LRA). Airlines and travel agencies will be responsible for collecting the new levy at the point of sale and remitting them to the LRA. The MFDP and LRA are now tasked with ensuring adherence to the order, with penalties for non-compliance. The LRA is required to provide regular revenue performance reports to the MFDP, ensuring transparency and accountability. President Boakai has meanwhile emphasized his administration's commitment to effective financial governance and urged all stakeholders to support the implementation of this measure for the benefit of Liberia's economy.
Imoedet reporting this. So in Liberia, the Finance Minister Augustine Gafwa has disclosed that the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has cancelled series of essential development initiatives totaling $51 million. This decision poses serious effects to vital sectors including health, education, elections, and domestic revenue mobilization. During his testimony before the Liberian Senate Ad Hoc Committee, which is currently investigating the agency's funding freezing, Minister Gafwa reported an alarming increase in the number of affected projects, with 3 additional cancellations confirmed. From WAD House Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Among the projects impacted is the agriculture, engineering and construction oversight services for water and health infrastructure, which is valued at $2.9 million. Another notable cancellation includes a community-led monitoring project implemented via NGO, which was budgeted at US $185,000. Minister Gafwan explained that the education system strengthening project, which is a budget of $23.4 million, stands out as one of the most significant initiatives now affected.
USAID was Liberia's second largest donor. To the World Bank. So if your second largest donor pulls out, then we hope that all the projects will not be cancelled.
The committee's hearings, chaired by Grand Kitman County Senator Dapa Vapala, said the decision by the U.S. government will affect more sectors and requested the finance minister to present a comprehensive analysis to enable leadership of the Senate to get an understanding of how to direct government fundings.
Besides the USAID, there are many other donor funds coming to this country. There's a need that the assessment capture each of them.
The cancellation of critical development projects could have far-reaching implications for Liberia's health, education, and governance sectors. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Abraham Parker in Monrovia.
To other development of the U.S. aid on the sub-region, particularly in Mali, authorities have responded to the cancellation of American aid by the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency. On February 15, the U.S. government announced the cancellation of grants exceeding 8 billion CFA francs, which was intended to support social cohesion in Mali. Augustine Colley has more in this report.
The U.S. government on February 15 announced the cancellation of a grant exceeding 8 billion CFA francs, which was intended to support social cohesion in Mali. However, in a press statement issued on Monday, February 24, the Malian Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed surprise and outrage over the decision. The ministry condemned the use of public development aid as an instrument of destabilization. Additionally, the Malian government says it has reached out to the U.S. authorities to seek clarification regarding the cancellation of aid, which had not been officially confirmed prior to this announcement. Malian officials stated that funds meant for development have been misappropriated, and they are urging the United States to initiate legal proceedings against those responsible for these embezzlements. The press statement also accuses the U.S. government of attempting to use public aid to undermine the sovereignty of African states. As a reminder, 2 years ago, the Malian government distanced itself from the American Agency for International Development, USAID. Bamako had put several USAID-funded projects on hold and demanded that all cooperations respect the sovereignty of the country and the priorities defined by the state.
Augustine Colley reporting there. In Mauritania, the Attorney General has requested a 20-year prison sentence for former President Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz in his appeal trial. During his first trial in December 2024, he was sentenced by the court to 5 years in prison. As a reminder, former Mauritanian head of state is accused of embezzlement of public funds and illicit enrichment while he was in power. Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz's enrichment is estimated at 67 million euros. Lawyers for the former Mauritanian president who rejected these accusations and the indictment are due to present their argument on Tuesday.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Senegal, an initial reactions have followed the signing of a new peace agreement between the government and the Movement of Democratic Forces of Casamance, MFDC, an independent movement in the southern part of the country. The signing of the protocol agreement with the faction of the South Front of the MFDC was done in Guinea-Bissau by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. In Casamance, the epicenter of this rebellion, for the past 40 years, civil society actors are welcoming a new step forward for peace in the region. The peace agreement signed with the rebel faction represents the first step in the Casamance development plan announced by Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye at the end of 2024. Turning attention to the Gambia, President Adama Barrow has reiterated his government commitment to freedom of the press. Speaking during the inauguration of a local television station, Star TV headquarters, the Gambian leader promised his government's continued support for press freedom. He also highlighted the importance of media in democracy and good governance, which he claimed his government stands for. Here's an excerpt of President Adama Barrow's address.
Since 2017, my administration has prioritized the creation of an open and thriving media environment. The enactment of the Access to Information Act under my leadership clearly demonstrates our dedication to media freedom, transparency, and good governance. It also reflects our shared commitment to freedom of expression, democracy, and national development, which my government will continue to cherish dearly and champion openly. A strong and independent media sector is an essential pillar of democracy. So we will continue to support initiatives that empower the press to operate freely, fairly, and beneficially. As a government, we remain steadfast in our commitment to peace, stability, and sustainable development. No one doubts that the media play a critical role in ensuring that information is disseminated accurately and responsibly, those contributing to developing an enlightened and unified nation. This makes it our collective responsibility to safeguard press freedom while promoting responsible journalism that fosters cohesion and progress.
Gambia's President Adama Barrow. In Benin, the opposition party, the Democrats, has condemned what it describes as systemic bans on its political demonstrations over recent weeks. The party, associated with former President Yahya Boni, views these bans as an infringement on the right to freely assemble. In contrast, the pro-government side holds a different perspective. Francis Boniface has more in this report.
In the past 2 weeks, the authorities in Benin have banned political demonstrations organized by the opposition party, the Democrats, in Cotonou and other cities across the country at least 4 times. The main opposition party of former Beninese President Boni Yayi argues that the ruling presidential majority faces no constraints when conducting their political activities. They view this ban as a form of unequal treatment. Renaud Adjogo is one of the leaders of the Democrats.
What we denounce is the lack of fairness in the treatment inflicted upon us by the mayors and prefects. The political party and the democratic one is a party that has never caused public or the disturbance in any of the demonstrations. It is not possible today to prohibit the undemocratic party from the right to assemble whatsoever.
Meanwhile, the opposition Democrats Party have indicated that it plans to take legal action against any future attempts to ban their activities, asserting that they will not be intimidated by the current government.
And that Francis Boniface with the details of Aziz Adams Sole's report from Cotonou. In Guinea, the legal community is outraged by the silence of the transitional authorities regarding the rising and kidnapping cases in socio-political figures who oppose the current direction of the transition. The most recent case involves the abduction last week of Abdul Sako, coordinator of the Forum of Social Forces in Guinea. Lawyers are demanding transparency in the ongoing investigations to locate all individuals kidnapped since last year. Chiano Alpha Ibrahim Abaude sent in this report from Conakry and voiced by Nadi Detete.
In a statement issued on Monday, the Guinean Bar Association expressed its confusion over the authorities' inaction regarding the abduction of the coordinator of the Guinean Social Forces Forum from his home. Abdul Sako was found a few days later in critical condition, according to his lawyers. Master Gabriel Kamano is a spokesperson for the Guinean Bar.
This is the silence of government and judicial authorities at a time when it was widely understood that there was a legal obligation to protect these situations and ensure proper care.
When questioned by our colleagues at TV Sankmond, government spokesperson Usman Gawal Diallo announced the launch of an investigation into the kidnapping of Abdul Sako.
As soon as the information came to light, the Minister of Justice initiated a judicial investigation. At this stage, there is no official communication. The individual has been located, and I believe he should undergo questioning and appear before the judiciary to clarify the situation fully and address public opinion.
Lawyers are now calling to be included in the investigation aimed at locating activists Fonike Mange, Amadou Biloba, Marouane Kamara, and Sadou Nimaga, who have been missing for several weeks.
The July dam incident has put pressure on authorities at all levels, urging them to ensure the investigations into high-profile cases progress effectively and that other incidents, such as kidnappings, are pursued and brought before the courts.
According to Abdul Sako's lawyers, his health remains critical after being found following his abduction. The coordinator of the Forum of Social Forces of Guinea is currently receiving medical treatment at a clinic in the capital, Conakry.
And that was Jano Alpha Ibrahim Abaude's report, voiced by Nat Didi Tete. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and around the world we are live on wadr.org. If you're active on social media, we're also live on Facebook at WADR English Service and also on YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. President Mahama calls for prudent monetary and fiscal management for economic reset as he swears in new governance of the central bank. Mauritania's state prosecutor requests a 20-year prison sentence for former President Mohamed Ould Abdel Aziz. Liberian government laments negative impacts of freeze of U.S. aid funds and key sectors of the economy. Guinean legal community bears feet at government silence over persistent kidnappings. Still ahead in the news, Nigerian Chief of Defense Staff calls for innovative strategies to combat counter-terrorism efforts. We also have the guest interview and sports news. Stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Let's travel down to Nigeria, where the Chief of Defense Staff CDS, General Christopher Musa, has called for innovative strategies and improved collaboration among security agencies in the country to ensure counter-terrorism efforts. Here's Usman Umar reports in this report.
Speaking at the opening of the Strategic Commanders Course in Abuja, organized by the National Counter-Terrorism Center (NCTC) and the United Kingdom High Commission, Musa emphasized the need for security commanders to adopt a comprehensive approach to crisis management. The training aims to enhance decision-making and coordination among senior military and security officials. The national coordinator of the NCTC, Major General Adamulaka, highlighted the evolving nature of terrorism in Nigeria and the broader West African region, mission. He underscored the importance of engaging with non-state actors and incorporating non-kinetic strategies alongside traditional military responses. The British High Commission, which partnered in the training, introduced participants to the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Program, JESIP, a model used in the United Kingdom to enhance interagency coordination during crises. The program is part of the UK-Nigeria Defence Partnership signed in 2024, which focuses on improving multi-agency response capabilities. The training is expected to strengthen Nigeria's counter-terrorism framework and contribute to regional security efforts amid ongoing insurgencies in Nigeria, the Sahel, and the Lake Chad Basin. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of Newslink focuses on Liberia, where the country's finance minister, Augustine Gaffer, disclosed that the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has cancelled the series of essential development initiatives totaling around $51 million. This initiative or this decision poses serious effects for vital sectors including health, education, election, and domestic revenue mobilization. Our guest this evening is Anderson Miame, Executive Director for the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, Senegal. He speaks about the impact of the cancellation of the USAID Fund project in the country.
We need more actions from the government, especially from him as the Minister of Finance and Development Planning, advising the President and the government to do the needful. Of course, the government has begun to make some cuts in terms of ensuring that we get resources to make up for the gaps, but I still believe that the government has to do more. There are more areas in the budget that the government can effect costs. For example, the budget of the legislature, there's just so much money there for committee meetings and all of that. We still have public officials that are receiving huge salaries and benefits. These are all places that we need to cut to ensure that we bridge the gap.
President Joseph Boakai has announced Executive Order Number 142, which aims to streamline revenue collection from international travel. And this order suspends the goods and services tax on international travel services and introduces a fixed levy on airline tickets for passengers departing Liberia. How does the funding saved from this measure help to close the gap created as a result of the cancellation of USAID-funded projects in the country?
These developments are welcoming. We need to review them maybe more substantively to see the economic sense to make from time to time that we can provide opinions on it. But these are not the only things that we need to do as Liberia. There are just so many areas that we can mobilize resources from. At the moment, we're not doing enough, even though the revenue agency has indicated over time that it has been performing well. We do not doubt that entirely, but we have gaps in the system that we need to address to get far more resources than what we're getting at the moment. There are loopholes in the system. There's so much corruption in the tax collection system that we need to address. We are losing a lot. Millions to tax holidays that we give to companies, duty-free privileges that we give to lawmakers. All of these things are things that we need to deal with, we need to abolish so that we collect resources from these different sources and it can help to make up for the gap and even get us more in terms of what we need to fund our development programs and interventions.
What impact the cancellation of USAID-funded projects will have on Liberia if the government does not act to fill in the gaps in the coming months?
Liberians have already started to feel the pinch of the decision. In the health sector, USAID supports health programming and interventions a whole lot. Many of the medical facilities across the country are being supported in part through USAID funding in terms of drugs, in terms of technical support and all of that. So there are just so many things that are resulting already, but more to come in terms of negative impacts if the decision is upheld beyond the 3 months period that has been given.
Anderson Miame is the Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, Senegal, speaking about the impact of the cancellation of USAID fund in the country. And we can join Sankole Janko for details in the world of sports now.
Hello, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Gambia's Queen Scorpions have completed a double over Niger to progress to the next stage of the WAFCON qualifiers. This comes after the Gambia won 2-1 in the return leg in Chess, Senegal on Monday. Goals from Basi Dabo and Fatou Kante were enough to earn the Gambians another victory. Having won 2-0 in the first leg in Niamey, the Gambia won 4-1 on aggregate to secure qualification to the next round. Meanwhile, Benin also completed a double over Sierra Leone with a 3-1 victory in the return leg on Monday. Benin won 2-1 in the first leg before completing the tie with a 3-1 away victory. While Benin secured qualification to the next round, Sierra Leone have been knocked out of the qualifiers. And Nigeria striker Victor Osimhen says the Super Eagles will correct the mistakes they have made when Africa's 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers resume next month, according to media reports. Nigeria's chances for the 2026 FIFA World Cup are slim after a poor run of form in the qualifiers. The Super Eagles have failed to win any match in their Group C4 outings in the FIFA World Cup Africa qualifiers. Ahead of their next outing against Rwanda in March, Osimhen said the Super Eagles will correct their mistakes with a hope to secure qualification for the biggest football competition. Nigeria will hope to overturn their fortunes when they take on group leaders Rwanda on March Day 5 in Kigali before hosting Zimbabwe 3 days later on March Day 6. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and around the world we are live on wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudu Juf and Umu Danyago for the technical assistance. Do interact with us on all of our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Christopher Ticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for